I signed the papers with the same hand. I once used to slide a wedding ring onto his finger. Funny, isn't it? How the same fingers that promise forever can be the ones that end it. My name is Rachel Coleman, and 11 days ago, I found out my husband was in love with my younger sister. Not an affair with a stranger. Not some woman at his office I'd never met. My sister. The girl I taught how to ride a bike. The girl I used to braid ribbons into her hair before school. The girl I once gave a kidney to when we were 26 and her body was failing and mine was the only match. I gave her a part of myself so she could live. And she took my husband instead. I want to tell you this story slowly because I lived it slowly. Every betrayal, every lie, every small crack that I mistook for normal marriage exhaustion. I need you to feel what I felt, piece by piece, the way I felt it. Because by the end, when I tell you what I did, I need you to understand why. My name is Rachel. I was 34 years old when my world ended. And this is the story of how I built it back, not with tears, but with silence, patience, and one single phone call that changed everything. Let's go back to when I still believed love was safe. I met Daniel Coleman when I was 28, working late nights at a design firm downtown, the kind of job where you convince yourself the exhaustion means you're important. He was an architect. Steady hands, quiet voice, the kind of man who listened when you spoke instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. Or so I thought. Our courtship wasn't dramatic. No grand gestures, no movie-perfect proposal. Just two tired people who found comfort in each other on Tuesday nights over cheap takeout and worse wine. I liked that about him. I liked that love, with Daniel, felt like rest. We married when I was 30. Small wedding. My mother cried through the whole ceremony. She always said I was the responsible one, the one who held the family together after Dad left. And my sister, Melissa stood beside me as my maid of honor, in a blush pink dress I picked out myself, smiling so wide it looked like it hurt. I didn't know then that smile was already a mask. Melissa was 6 years younger than me. Where I was steady, she was chaos, beautiful chaos, the kind people forgive because she laughed loud and lit up every room she walked into. She'd bounced between jobs, between boyfriends, between apartments she couldn't quite afford. And every time she fell, I was the one who caught her. That's just what older sisters do. Or that's what I believed anyway. 3 years before my kidneys ever mattered to this story, hers failed first. A rare autoimmune condition, the doctors said, aggressive and cruel. I remember sitting in that sterile hospital room, watching her turn gray and small in a bed that swallowed her whole, and thinking, I cannot lose her. I will not lose her. So when the tests came back and I was a match, I didn't hesitate, not for 1 second. Daniel held my hand in the pre-op room and whispered, "You're the strongest person I've ever known." I remember how proud he looked, how proud I felt too. I gave my sister a kidney. I gave her years of her life back. I never imagined I'd need to ask for something in return, not money, not gratitude, nothing. Just decency. Just the bare minimum of not destroying the one thing I loved most. She couldn't even give me that. The unraveling didn't happen all at once. It crept in, the way rot does, quiet, patient, invisible until the wood gives way beneath your feet. It started with small things. Daniel working later. Daniel checking his phone at dinner, angling the screen away from me without realizing I noticed. I always noticed, I just didn't want to believe what I was seeing. Melissa coming around more often, just to visit, she'd say, sitting a little too close to him on the couch, laughing a little too long at his jokes. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself grief does strange things to a marriage, because that year, we'd also lost our second pregnancy, 11 weeks in, and Daniel and I had barely spoken about it since. Maybe he needed someone easier to be around. Maybe I'd become someone hard to love, wrapped up in my own sorrow. That's the cruelest part of gaslighting yourself. You become your own abuser before anyone else even has the chance. One night, I came home early from a work trip. My flight got moved up, and I remember feeling almost giddy, thinking I'd surprise Daniel, maybe cook something, maybe just lie beside him and feel normal again. The house was dark when I walked in. Too dark, too quiet. I heard voices from upstairs. His voice, low, and hers, unmistakably hers. That same laugh I'd known since she was a baby, since I used to rock her to sleep myself when our mother worked nights. I stood at the bottom of the stairs for what felt like an hour, though it was probably 10 seconds. My whole body went cold, the kind of cold that doesn't come from temperature. I climbed the stairs slowly, quietly. Some part of me, some small, desperate part, still hoped I'd misheard. Hoped I'd open that door and find some innocent explanation waiting for me. I opened the door. And there they were. Not in the way you're imagining, not caught in some scandalous act. Something almost worse. Daniel was sitting on the edge of our bed, my bed, and Melissa was kneeling in front of him, her hands on his knees, her face tilted up toward his like she was memorizing it. And he was looking back at her with an expression I hadn't seen directed at me in over a year. Tenderness, real aching tenderness. Neither of them heard me at first. I just stood there in the doorway, watching two people I loved more than anyone in this world quietly destroy me without even noticing I existed. Melissa saw me first. Her face went white. Rachel. Daniel shot up like he'd been burned. Rachel, this isn't we weren't. Don't, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Don't you dare lie to me right now, not after everything. Nobody spoke for a long moment. The silence in that room was louder than any scream could have been. Finally, Daniel said the words that ended my marriage before I even asked for a divorce. I love her, Rachel. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen, but I love her. I laughed. I actually laughed, a broken, hollow sound I didn't recognize as my own. You love her, I repeated. My sister, the one I gave a kidney to, the one I nearly died for. Melissa was crying now, saying my name over and over like it was an apology, like repetition could undo betrayal. Rachel, please, let me explain. It's not what you. It's exactly what it looks like, I said, and something inside me went very, very still. Not calm, not peace, just still, like the eye of a storm. I didn't scream that night. I didn't break anything, didn't throw anything, didn't claw at either of them the way some wounded animal part of me wanted to. I simply turned around, walked back down the stairs, got in my car, and drove until I didn't recognize the streets anymore. I sat in a grocery store parking lot until sunrise, staring at nothing, replaying every warning sign I'd ignored, every excuse I'd made for both of them. And somewhere in those long, silent hours, something shifted inside me. Grief has a season, and mine was about to end. Because what Daniel didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that 3 months earlier, purely by accident, during a conversation with my lawyer about updating my will after my miscarriage, I had learned something about Daniel's business and about a certain loan Melissa had co-signed for their future townhouse that would soon become the very thing that unraveled both their lives. They thought I left that house broken. They had no idea I left it already building the plan that would end them. The days after I left that house felt like walking through water. Heavy, slow. Every breath took effort I didn't know I had to give. I moved into a small rental across town, nothing fancy, just 4 walls and a bed and a window that looked out onto a parking lot instead of the garden Daniel and I had planted together. I used to hate that garden in the beginning. Now I missed it the way you miss a limb. But grief, I learned, can live in the same body as clarity. They don't cancel each other out. You can cry yourself to sleep and still wake up thinking clearly the next morning. That's what happened to me. Let me back up and explain what I knew, because none of this makes sense without it. 3 months before I walked into that bedroom, my lawyer, a careful, gray-haired woman named Patricia who'd handled my family's affairs since my father passed, called me in to update my will after the miscarriage. It was routine, she said, just making sure everything was current. During that meeting, she mentioned, almost in passing, a joint loan application Daniel had filed for a townhouse investment property, an investment he told me nothing about. A property he planned to flip for profit, using capital from our shared accounts as collateral. And listed as co-signer, right beside his name, was Melissa's. At the time, I didn't understand what I was looking at. I remember feeling a small flicker of unease. Why would Daniel need Melissa's signature on anything financial? But grief had hollowed me out so completely that month, I let it go. I filed it away in some back corner of my mind and didn't think about it again. Until the night I found them together. Until every quiet, unexplained absence, every business dinner, every time Daniel said he was checking on an investment, suddenly rearranged itself into a picture I could finally see clearly. They hadn't just fallen in love behind my back. They had been building a life behind my back, using my money, my trust, my name on shared accounts I had never fully audited because I believed, foolishly, completely, that my husband would never need to hide anything from me. So here is what I did. I didn't call a lawyer first. I didn't call my mother, though God knows she deserved to know what her youngest daughter had done. I called Patricia. I need everything, I told her over the phone, my voice flat, almost clinical. Every account, every asset, every signature Daniel has used my name or our shared credit for in the last 2 years. I want a full picture. Today, if you can. Patricia, bless her, didn't ask why. She simply said, I'll have it by tomorrow morning. What we found took my breath away. Daniel hadn't just borrowed against our marriage. He had leveraged nearly everything, our savings, a home equity line I never approved, even a portion of the small inheritance my father left me before he died, to fund not one but 2 property investments with Melissa. Properties that were, on paper, meant to become their future. A future they were building with my money while I sat at home grieving a baby we lost together. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was architectural. They had built an entire structure on a foundation of my trust, brick by brick, while I had no idea I was the one paying for it. I want to be honest with you about something. In that moment, sitting in Patricia's office with those documents spread across the table, I didn't feel rage the way you'd expect. I felt something colder. Something that had been quietly assembling itself in me since childhood, since I was the girl who fixed everyone's problems, who never got to fall apart because someone always needed me steady. That coldness had a name now, and it was resolve. What are my options? I asked Patricia. She looked at me for a long moment, the way people look at you when they're deciding whether you're strong enough to hear the truth. Legally, she said, you have grounds to freeze every joint asset immediately. You can also pursue Daniel for the unauthorized use of funds tied to your inheritance, which was never meant to be community property in the first place. If you want to move quickly, we file for divorce and financial separation simultaneously. It won't be gentle, but it will be thorough. Do it, I said, all of it. For the next 6 weeks, I said very little to either of them. I let Daniel believe I was simply grieving in silence, licking my wounds somewhere quiet. I let Melissa's texts pile up unanswered. I'm sorry, please talk to me. I never meant to hurt you. I still love you. You're still my sister. Each message felt like a small knife, but I didn't respond to a single one. Silence, I was learning, could be its own kind of weapon. Behind that silence, Patricia and I built our case. We froze every joint account tied to Daniel's name. We pulled the paperwork on both investment properties and discovered that, because my inheritance had technically funded a portion of the down payments without my documented consent, I had legal standing to claim a share of those properties. Properties Daniel and Melissa had already begun renovating, already begun dreaming their future inside of. The apartment I once shared with Daniel, the accounts we'd built together over 4 years of marriage, the very foundation of the fresh start, he and my sister thought they were quietly constructing. All of it began to unravel, thread by thread, while they believed I was simply too broken to fight back. They had no idea grief could sharpen a person instead of dulling them. The final piece came together on a Thursday afternoon in October. I remember the weather because it was unseasonably warm, the kind of day that feels like it's mocking you for how badly you're hurting inside. Patricia called to tell me the paperwork was finalized. The freeze on joint assets was legally enforced. The claim on the investment properties had been filed. And Daniel, along with Melissa, had just been formally notified. I made one phone call that day, just one. I called Melissa. She picked up on the first ring, breathless, hopeful, like she'd been waiting weeks for exactly this moment. Rachel. Oh my God, Rachel, I'm so glad you called. I've missed you so much. I know things are complicated, but I'm not calling to reconcile, I said quietly. My voice didn't shake. I want you to understand that. After everything, my voice did not shake. I'm calling to tell you that the townhouse, the one you and Daniel have been renovating for the past 8 months, the one you've probably already picked paint colors for, it's frozen, along with every account you two share. My lawyer filed this morning. Silence, a long, stretching silence. Rachel, what are you talking about? You used my inheritance, I said. Both of you, without my knowledge, without my consent. My father's money, the money he left me before he died, funded a piece of the home you were building with my husband. Did you know that? Or did Daniel not bother telling you where the money actually came from? Her breathing changed. I could hear it, the exact moment realization hit her. I didn't, Rachel, I swear I didn't know. It doesn't matter anymore, I said. What matters is that you took the one thing I never thought either of you would touch. Not my husband, not my time, my father. You took a piece of my father and used it to build a life with the man who was supposed to build one with me. Rachel, please, we can fix this. We can talk to Daniel, we can. There's nothing to fix, I said. There's nothing left to build. You wanted a future so badly you forgot to check what it was standing on. Now it's gone. Both properties are tied up in litigation for the next year, minimum. Every dollar Daniel borrowed against our marriage has to be accounted for. Your credit, Melissa, you co-signed those loans, remember? Your name is on all of it, too. She was crying now, the same crying I'd heard 1,000 times growing up, the crying that always used to make me rush to fix things for her. But I didn't feel the pull anymore. I felt only a strange, quiet peace, like setting down something impossibly heavy after carrying it for years without realizing how much it weighed. I gave you a kidney, I said, my voice finally breaking, just slightly, just enough to let her hear the human being underneath the resolve. I gave you years of your life back, Melissa, and you used them to take mine. I hung up before she could answer. Daniel called 4 times that night. I let every call go to voicemail. His messages grew increasingly desperate, first anger, then bargaining, then something that almost sounded like the tenderness I used to know, begging me to just talk, just once, just let him explain. I deleted each one without listening past the first 10 seconds. There was nothing left to explain. I had lived the explanation. I had watched it unfold in real time, in my own bedroom, on my own bed. The divorce finalized 4 months later. Because of the financial entanglements, because of the properties tied up in litigation, Daniel walked away with almost nothing. A fraction of what he'd hoped to build with my sister, buried under legal fees and a credit history in ruins. Melissa, last I heard, moved 3 states away, taking a job well below what she was qualified for, trying to rebuild a life from the wreckage of choices she couldn't undo. My mother didn't speak to Melissa for over a year. I never asked her to choose sides. She chose on her own, the moment she learned what her youngest daughter had done to hold onto happiness that was never hers to take. As for me, I sold the house. Not out of bitterness, but because some spaces hold too much weight to keep living inside them. I bought something smaller, something entirely my own, with a garden I planted myself, no help, no compromise, just soil and patience and time. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did. If freezing those accounts, filing that litigation, making that final call to my sister, if any of it was too much, too cold, too calculated for a woman who was supposedly heartbroken. I tell them the truth. I didn't destroy their future out of revenge. I simply stopped protecting people who never once considered protecting me. For years, I was the one who fixed things, who gave pieces of myself away without asking what I'd have left when it was over. That phone call wasn't cruelty. It was the first time in my life I chose myself completely, without apology, without guilt, without looking back to see who I was leaving behind. I gave my sister a kidney once, because I believed love meant giving until it hurt. I've since learned that real love, the kind worth having, never asks you to disappear in order to prove it. I am 35 years old now. I sleep peacefully most nights. And when I look in the mirror, I don't see the woman who was broken in that doorway anymore. I see the woman who survived it, and finally, quietly, chose to build something entirely her own.